Welcome to the Sing to Thrive podcast for a powerful conversation on the ancient magic of sacred sites, living gateways where voice becomes spell, sound becomes ceremony, and the land itself remembers. These places awaken soul memory, stir ancestral wisdom, and ignite transformation. And we are so thrilled to have back on our show Mr. Darren Deojee. Welcome back, Darren.
Hey Julia, thank you so much for having me back on. It's a pleasure to be here chatting with you again, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation this morning about these amazing spaces.
Fantastic. We've got 3 or 4 months left before we head over there to visit these powerful places, and already just myself, I'm noticing that stuff's coming up. You know, my ancestors are from over there, so I do believe that there's some memory being stirred up within me.
That's the whole point. That is the point of us going to these places, is to stir. It's almost like genetic memory, spiritual memory, ancestral memory, all in one spot, in one opportunity, which is an absolute treasured gift. And really, the thing about these places, it's not just about turning up. Take Stonehenge for example. Thousands of people wander through that place without necessarily having the experience that we're talking about here or what we're seeking to evoke in a few months' time. But it's very much about how you approach these places and how one spends time there as to what you can get out of it, really.
Yeah, it comes back to having that conscious intention, because what I'm realizing, even on such a deeper level, is intention is everything. You know, even
Absolutely.
when we're singing, when we're sounding, it doesn't matter what note you're singing, what hertz you're singing at. It's actually all about heartfelt intention.
And what I've found with working with this sort of thing over the years, both in rites of passage with men as well as visiting places like this, is it begins, the opportunity begins from the moment you start considering going. And in a way, I don't like the language of it, but it's a perfect word, really. And it is what really lies behind the notion of pilgrimage, which is before you take your first step, you are kind of determining the alignment. You're determining the sort of intention. I love this. I love the notion of Alice in Wonderland for this. So in Alice in Wonderland, she follows the white rabbit, and the rabbit goes down this hole. But what's kind of not discussed there is that if Alice had wandered through the woods by herself, she may not have seen the hole. It doesn't mean the hole wasn't there. It was to do with how she walks through the woods, how you align with it, and this is where these portals of opportunity arise, is through the essence of approach. And I love the notion of approach. It's how you approach it. From the minute you take your first step, that determines what opportunities can open up for you when you finally get there.
Exactly. I think once you decide, yes, I'm doing this, your whole system starts to prepare for that. And that's what's exciting, because
Yes,
you've said yes to something as well. It's so easy just to say no, because this is a big thing, that what we're doing. This is not
mm,
just a retreat where we're going and putting our feet up and, reading a book and fluffy slippers
exactly.
and whatever. We'll be feeling on a very deep level. And I think that can be really challenging for people.
Yeah, because there's a level of focused intent and even almost a form of spiritual discipline required to be able to get the most out of this sort of thing. Um, you know, even if there's the whole mindset around it, if somebody thinks, "Oh, I'm just going to go and see some stones in a field," woohoo, or I'm going to go and get that snapshot. I'm going to go and get that picture of this ancient site. How great! I'll show it to my friends. Been there, seen that, got the T-shirt sort of thing. I mean, if that's the level of intention and sort of perspective one brings, then all one is going to go home with is a nice snapshot of some stones in a field. Whereas if we can integrate the essence of approach, which is, yeah, superficially that might be what's happening, but actually there are so many more layers that can be brought to bear there. And the more layers that we can bring to bear, which is through story, through intention, through understanding, through guidance, all these things, once they integrate, then so much more can be got from these experiences and from the opportunities that these places offer. Because it's not just about the structure that somebody's made there. It's about, well, why did they do it there? It's because there's an energy in the land. There's something about the land there. There's something about that site. And then when you combine the energy of the site with the focused will and intent of all the people who have ever gathered there, that's what creates the space and the opportunity. I don't know if anybody there has ever been to sort of like, a place that has been reused for the same purpose again and again and again and again. It really does foster, uh, a sacred zone or a sacred site that for those who can enter into it with the right approach, they can start to tap into the work done before. They can tap into the depth of space that's been cultivated. I mean, one of the places that we're going to, just off the top of my head, St. Bees Priory, really surprised me because, I like churches, I like old churches. They can be nice to be in, but this particular one has been in continuous use for over 900 years. Now, how many of us have been to a site that has been continually used by the gathered mass and will of humans for the same thing for 900 years? There are few places that afford such an opportunity. And oh my goodness, the quality of the space, the quality of the opportunity really, really is
Yeah.
phenomenal.
The energy would be, and it's reminding me of when I was first working with this woman I was helping her with her voice, and she was helping me, she was sort of teaching me how to work with kirtan and sing kirtan. And this was like 15 years ago. And
Hmm.
she spoke about the Gayatri mantra and how it's
Mm.
been sung for thousands of years by thousands of people. And it's built this massive, energetic
Field.
and yeah, field. And the way I look at it too, everything is creating a sacred geometric pattern in the field.
Hmm.
Every
Yes.
time we sing that, we're adding to that. Not only are we adding to it, we're tapping into it.
A hundred
And it
percent.
starts to reshape our cells. It starts to have that effect on us. And that's why you can
Yeah.
be chanting mantra and come out the other end and just be totally blissed out. It is because of what you're talking about. It's been done for so many, I mean, especially the Gayatri Mantra, so many thousands of years,
Yeah.
creates this amazing energy.
It's a
So I'm
great
excited.
example. It's a great
Mm,
example. And just to pick on that example, so say the Gayatri Mantras, now for people who haven't tapped into such a thing, an everyday correlation for them is, say there's been this amazing song that some star released in our lifetimes or just before. And when it comes, and it's one that you align with or relate with in some way, and it comes on, and all of a sudden you get the tingles or the rush that comes from this song coming on. Now that's us tapping into the field of that song, of all the
yep.
people who have been touched by that song in this recent times. And every time you revisit that song, you can retap the depth of that pool and add to it. Now, that's dealing with something that's in the insubstantial, in the multidimensional, it's in the timeless space where, almost like the akashic of the song in a way. Um, but it's unanchored in a location. It's all over the place. Gayatri Mantra you can tap from anywhere in the world. What we're talking about here is that being anchored somewhere in a physical location and being able to tap something that is anchored in a location but can still deliver those sort of results of tapping an existent pool as well as adding to it with your own sort of shoulder to the wheel of that intention for these times in a way.
Because for me, when I tap into that, I see just the energy going deep within the earth as well as up into the ethers. So it's like we're stepping into that field. And I think when you come in with conscious intention to heal and just trusting that the higher self always knows what it's doing, we've just got to let go, surrender and allow, and the body, will always be guided. So let's talk about Avebury, because that's the first place we're visiting. And isn't that
Yes.
that's the largest stone circle in the world, isn't it?
It's the largest stone circle known about in the world today, yes. And it is pretty special. It's a pretty special place. It's it's stunning and it's awesome. We're starting off in Avebury, which is epic and impressive. But what we've found, and this is what I love about the progression that we've got in this journey that we've charted here, as we move from sort of places with structure to places without human structure, natural structure, is that if you come across, say you come across a car chassis of a car that got burnt out 50 years ago, there's not much left of that car. You're not going to be able to drive it very well. You might not even know what it was for if you just came across the chassis, the engine had rotted away, the seats were gone, things like that. You might think it was some kind of strange cave shelter or something like that. The ability to deduce what it was for might be quite difficult. And Avebury's a bit like this because so much of it has been destroyed. And this is what I love about the journey we're doing. So we're starting off at Avebury, which is massive and impressive, but you know, getting this the real sense of what Avebury was about is is a bit of a stretch because it's so broken in terms of so many of the stones are gone. They've stuck a village in the middle of it, which is an incredible desecration, but also a wonder in itself. There's this main road that goes right through the middle of it because it's so big. But it's still a great starting point because then as we go on our journey, we're going to get a sense of the contrast and the difference between being in a space which is still very quite intact and being in one which is a bit skewed, but you can still get something from it. And it's allowing us to it's going to allow us to calibrate our senses. It's going to allow us to get a sense of the difference between being somewhere where you're dealing with a remnant and somewhere where you're dealing with something that is still very intact, or maybe a natural space like Fingal's, where we're culminating Fingal's Cave, which is 100% intact and unblemished and untarnished, and which is why we're finishing there, where our senses will be much more calibrated and sensitized to what we're dealing with. But it doesn't make Avebury any less impressive. But certainly our journey, and why it is a journey, is because we're looking to build that sensitivity in ourselves and the participants, and we start a piece at a time. And frankly, Avebury's still one of my favorite sites because it is so epic, it's so stunning, it's so impressive. The stones are so majestic and so huge, one cannot, I challenge anyone to not be left with a sense of wonder and awe as to the monumentalness of it in terms of what this may have been for people to
Yeah.
use, and then
So
for
what?
us to do our best to tap into that.
Yeah. So what's your theory on Avebury? Like, what was it? Was it a portal? Like, are these sacred circles? Are they gateways? Are they? Yeah. What's your take
Good
on that?
question. Good question. Um, I think personally, from being in them, they're synthetic, and I mean most people when they understand the word synthetic, they think man-made, but I mean it from the perspective of synthesis, which is a seamless integration. Synthesis is a seamless integration, and I experience these places as opportunities for seamless integration, and so it's like the energy of the land has lent an opportunity that the ancients tapped into. And as a result of that, rather than the spaces themselves being portals, they are places where it's easier for us to create portals. It's,
Yeah.
it's for us to use them to activate portals, and it's easier to create portals of opportunity in such places. And sound is one of the easiest and most accessible ways for a group to produce a portal. In whatever for whatever intent is there, and this is something that we have lost in the modern day, and it's something that I accidentally stumbled upon in group work, which was the true power of mass. So you know when like an old word for going to church was going to mass, and
Mm,
I think people used to think that that meant just like gathering. But what my experience of it, it's not about gathering. It's about what happens when humans come with genuinely shared intent that is aligned and genuinely shared activity, in this case sound, and the power of mass, human mass of shared intent in that way creates a completely different opportunity than doing it by yourself, you know, massively different. And it's almost like we amplify the
yeah.
human potential for connection and alignment with larger energies and larger beings even than we could perhaps access by ourselves. And I have experienced this with groups, and I could say things about it, but it's something that can truly only be experienced, you know, in terms of what one might feel peering in, or what one might notice is coming into alignment with us as we have come into alignment. It's like what responds to our effort, to the quality of our offering in these
Mm,
places. And in this case, it's the offering of our presence, the offering of our sound, the offering of our alignment and shared intent. And it's all about the quality of that. And certainly what I'm certain we're going to notice on this journey is that as we progress and as we come into deeper alignment with each other and through these practices, is the quality of response that we're going to experience is going to amplify as we go until it culminates in the stupendous and majestic place of Fingal's Cave at the end.
yeah, exactly. I was noticing with the words there, like mass. Well, what does it do? It creates a mass of energy when you've. It's interesting that they call it mass, but it creates
Exactly.
a mass of energy or a massive energy. Like it's just interesting wording there.
It is. And it's like we become bigger, as you know,
Mm.
the human group becomes like a larger whole human made up of the smaller parts, and things can see us that couldn't see us when we were standing there by ourselves. You know, a lot greater beings are able to notice us in such instances when otherwise it might just be like it's a bit like the difference between, you know, you walk along the path and it might be covered in ants, but you don't see them because they're alone. But then all of a sudden, if 100 ants all gathered together, you might notice them. Whereas stand alone, you wouldn't. It's just like that. And that's exactly the sort of experience that I've had with groups when all of a sudden larger sort of beings or awarenesses can be felt by the group.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Talk to us about the springs. We're visiting the red and the white springs. For anyone that, even anyone that's not coming on the trip, so they understand how powerful these sites are. Because I imagine the water is structured in such a way and they use it for healing. I had an experience like that in Italy at Colla Valenza. It's a massive church and
Mm.
massive nunnery. And this Spanish nun had this vision. Jesus spoke to her and said, go to Italy, to this particular area, and dig wells because the water will heal. So she did. She made that happen. And I think they dug down something like 90 meters. They're pretty deep, what they did.
Mm.
The water is amazing. Like I had a massive release and healing in that place. I think water is one of the most important things for all of us. Water is sacred. Water,
It is, yeah.
the sun and the water, without those things, without Mother Earth, without the sun, without water, we cannot exist. And it's
Mm.
such a carrier of information because water is conscious and we're really only just tapping into that over the last decade. And I'm sure we've known it in our previous history that's all been wiped out, but it's all coming back to the surface. And so, yeah, talk to us about the springs, the red and the white springs in
Yeah,
particular.
so just on the point of water, first of all, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. I mean, of course, water is sacred. We are the primary component in our structure is water. You know, that we are more water than any of the other elements. So it's a vital component for survival for us, literally. But in terms of the sacredness of it and the specialness of it, is to do with the structure of the water. You know, water has a structure that can be affected by where it is. It's like a good example is maybe the Thames River that runs through London. Where the Thames originates, which is hundreds of miles away from there, it is this beautiful, pristine, clear stream of water. By the time it gets to London, it is a sludgy soup that only a crazy person would want to sort of swim in or be in. Its structure is completely changed from something which is appealing and attractive and something that makes you smile when you look at it. Like seeing pristine water that you can see the weeds on the bottom of the riverbed in is a delight to witness compared to a
And
sludgy soup that's kind of swirling around and you've just got no idea what's in it. It's still the same water. That water in London originated in that place, but the structure of it has completely changed by the time it's got to the end of London, really, and is ready to rejoin the sea to be renewed again, basically. You were
and
going to
there's
say
something
something
you
there.
said there, yeah, because you said it makes you smile when you look at beautiful, clean water where you can see to the bottom.
Mm,
Well, think about that. When you smile, what's that doing? Again, you're adding to the field. You're adding joy.
absolutely.
You're adding a heartfelt joy to the field. When we look at something that's not appealing to us, we don't smile normally.
Mm,
And then that adds that to the field. So,
yeah,
with these
exactly.
sacred sites that are at the red and white springs, is it an ancient structure that the water's running through? Like, what is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's to do with where, you know, the rock layers that the water is going through as it comes up to the surface. It's to do with the underground aquifers that feed that, and these are all in the unseen. These are in the subterranean, but it's something that the ancients were aware of. I mean, wells and springs were primarily. I mean, wells are called wells for a good reason. It makes you well, but but with springs where the water emerges from the land, these were always sacred because in days gone by, I mean, people these days don't think about it because you just go and turn your tap on and water is there. But really, in the ancient times, if you're walking along, you know, it's not until you come across a water source that you're getting anything to drink. It's that simple. And if you find the place where water emerges from land, you know, where it actually seemingly appears out of nowhere, that is a marvel. That is a wonder. It's like the dream of the life on the land is being nourished and nurtured and fed and willed into life and continuity through these little pockets of opening. And if we take away our sort of scientific lens of modern knowing and we just drop into that sense of wonder, is look, there's land all around here, and then out of nowhere, there's water that I can drink emerging, just bubbling out of the land. Where's that coming from? It's bubbling out of the earth. This is a marvel. And the area of Glastonbury where the red and white springs are, but also nearby there is a place called Wells, and Wells Cathedral has a well-known well, and around Wells Cathedral they've got these rivulets of water that are channeled all over the place in recognition of the marvel and the wonder of water emerging from the land. Bath, also nearby, another place celebrated for its healing springs. So it could be that that entire region had something special about either the sedimentary layers that the water is coming through or the aquifers that are feeding it. But this is all rational speculation that to me is actually irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It's about tapping into the sort of native wonder of not knowing, and it being okay to not know and to just be in the experience and the marvel. And in the case of the red and the white springs, these are ancient markers of the masculine and the feminine, because the red is symbolic of feminine fertility and the menstrual cycle, and the white is symbolic of male fertility because of the color of the substance that comes from men in conceiving. So you have the red for the feminine and the white for the masculine there, and these are both in that same place in Glastonbury and very close to each other. And obviously the ancients saw something in this and revered it. And then we started to get the layers of what we were talking about earlier, which is masked human intent and gratitude and acknowledgement and sacredness across time, across possibly thousands of years. And it's a rare opportunity these days when things are so transient and things come and go so quickly in the modern world. Even modern homes, for example, modern homes start to crumble after just a few years. They don't really tend to last in the way that like an ancient cottage from the 15th century is still standing. In a way, we've lost that sort of ability to mold the earth and to be with the earth in a way that is truly lasting. But these places are a place for us to be able to remember that through exposure to the field in terms of to our own senses, but also to tap this sort of ancestral memory and ancestral knowing, which until you've experienced ancestral awakening or ancestral knowing, it can just seem like an idea, or it can seem like something that somebody's just made up. But that's for people who haven't experienced. They can stand on the sidelines and cast whatever judgments they like, because it's from a place of ignorance, innocent ignorance. And they might speak from a place of scientific knowing and poo-pooing, but actually they're missing the opportunity of what can happen when ancestral knowing can be triggered. And I'll give an example of that, where we and this is something that only came through the men's work. It was really interesting, and we were doing men's rights for quite a while, and we'd get them doing survival skills and stuff, which wasn't it had a practical intention, but it was so fascinating. So most people in the bushcraft world and the survival skill world, when they're teaching fire lighting, the most ancient skill of survival, certainly in the northern hemisphere, in the northern hemisphere, humans without fire could not live here. But what they do is they teach bow drill. And so bow drill is this method where, you get a little peg and you put it on a board and you're working away to try and start the fire that way. And we had good results with that somewhat, where some people would start fire, some wouldn't. But people were getting really caught up in the complexity of the method, because it's still a method, all this sort of stuff. But then we realized, just in conversation, that the land here, in the UK anyway, isn't really bow drill friendly. It's too wet, to really. I mean, yes, you can make a bow drill here, but it's very, very wet. It's not practical. But the land here is full of flint and stone. And
Yeah.
actually, the more traditional fire lighting method here would have been flint and steel, or flint and lodestone. Iron pyrite sort of stuff, or stone with iron in it. And so we had guys doing flint and steel, and something happened. And when we're in a wooden glade and you've got maybe a half dozen to a dozen guys chipping away with this flint on steel, with this rock on rock, chipping away in the glade, and then the echo of that stirs around the glade. So many guys have paused, and then when we've debriefed afterwards, they speak of, and this is more than one, and across many occasions, uncontrived, we leave people to have this experience or not, but they notice what they call an unfamiliar familiarity. an unfamiliar familiarity. It's unfamiliar to them in this life because they've never done it before. But there's something in them that feels larger than what they have noticed before in themselves, that is familiar, that says, I know this. Not rationally. It's a pervasive feeling, and it becomes a pervasive holding where you can be held by the familiarity. And this is tapping into the ancestral field because humans have been bashing rocks against each other for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. You know, we've been bashing rocks. It's the longest part of our history is bashing rocks against each other. And this has been a marvel to be with around guys, where to watch them be stirred in what is truly ancestral memory, genetic memory. It's encoded in us. And Mark, I was in the event with, he does a lot of historical martial arts. He actually led the British team to be world champions in medieval martial arts, you know, getting up in armor and swords and bashing each other. But full contact, just wild stuff. But he also did other stuff where him and his friends would, because they loved this stuff, they would be investigating ancient methods and ancient fabrics, and they would recreate them. They would be like, right, how do we make this? How do we do this? How do we live as they did? And he speaks of once this had stirred in him, he then started to notice how his body responded differently to different fabrics and materials. That if he suddenly wore a garment that was woven in an ancient way, that if he stroked his fingers over it, that there would be it would be like a familiarity to be a part of it. That would be going, yes, I know this. You know, this, I've never worn this before, and yet my fingers know it. You know, compared to putting on, you know, a Bergos jacket made of Gore-Tex or something like that, where there's no ancestral memory there. It's very recent. So yes, we get the benefit of the shelter, but we don't get that sort of synesthetic experience, that integrative experience. And these are portals of opportunity to ancestral connection and healing for people of European ancestry who are very cut off from the ancestral field. They're very cut off of what it means to be connected to the ancestors. For most Westerners, it just means going and visiting a gravestone. You know, it's not a field of comfort, a source of comfort, a source of reassurance, a source of feeling held by something. And I know that there's so many people I know who feel a little bit lost in the world. They feel a little bit alien here. They feel like the world is a bit unfamiliar to them, and they feel very alone. And it's because to the you that has come here for this life, that might be true, but it's not true for the mammal. It's not true for the ancestral heritage that your DNA carries, because really, our DNA, each of us, everybody watching this, has survived every plague. It's survived every single cataclysm, every single challenge, every single bear encounter and lion battle. Our ancestors have got through all of that, and that experience is in our DNA. It carries all of that with it because there's nowhere to lose it. Because obviously, you know, evolution is all about the adaptation of iterative learning to survive and to sense and to be aware. And Westerners are completely cut off from the reality of that. And I remember the first sweat lodge I ever did, the woman who was leading it had said to me, she'd studied with Native Americans, and they apparently spoke of the 4 disconnections of the Western man. And one of them was disconnection from ancestors. Now, when she said this to me 20 years ago, I had no idea what that meant. Whereas now I know what that means. And it's like the ancestral connection, even if you don't feel at home, the ancestors are at home. The mammal is at home. And by being able to tap into those realities within us, we can all of a sudden start to feel at home in our bodies, at home in the world, at ease and at peace, a deeper level of peace, to feel held by something greater than us, to feel like we're not quite so alone. And that whole story and reality is within us. We don't need others for that. We just need to have these portals of opportunity to build that bridge of remembrance that is available to all of us. And that's really what we're doing here with these sites. The sites are a glamorous opportunity in a way. It's not the same as just saying let's go and bash stones together until we remember. This is a different manner of approach, but to achieve the same outcome, and
I've
even
never.
spiritual alignment as well, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. It's just one great big spiritual adventure. I've never thought of it how you phrase that then, that the ancestors are at home. Like, oh,
Yes,
okay. So just connecting in with them and the energy of that. And I must say, this last year, more than ever before, I have definitely felt more at home within myself. And I've been the most challenged ever, but I have been doing a lot of ancestral work and connecting through song, actually, because I wanted to I wanted to write more songs to honor them. And I didn't know what that was going to look like, because often what happens with me, and I've been doing this for nearly 30 years, I'll get an idea about something, or who knows, I just have an idea, right? And be like, okay, I haven't written about that. I'd like to write about that. And then what happens is that it's like I'm planting a seed, and then all of a sudden in a week's time, this song has just come through me, and I've got a really good discipline where when I have an idea, I will record it, and then I will just keep singing it and keep singing it. Get up to go to the beach in the morning. Oh, what's that song I'm working on? Keep singing it. Creates a neural pathway that I remember. And just even this last fortnight, I've been working very deeply on surrendering to the feminine flow, because these phrases hold energy and intent, and they are a shape, because everything's energy and everything creates a shape. And that shape
absolutely.
affects our cells and our DNA. So, me singing that, other than all of the neuroplastic changes that happen and epigenetically my cells all benefit, there's that deeper spiritual knowing and happening, because I've been having such old memories come up of where I shut down the feminine, where I felt not safe in the world, and stuff that I have not remembered in decades. And so for me, the process around using a mantra that maybe I'm working on through the healing realm, but even just writing a song and setting that intention, whatever needs to come up will come up. And with the ancestors, I've written some beautiful songs. And when we share them in singing circles, which I run every week, the power is palpable. At the end of whenever I do a really powerful song, we never clap, because that breaks the field, right? So I keep everyone in the energy of that and take them into a meditation, and sort of take them to the top of the mountain where they are really seeing themselves overcoming their challenges and sitting in the frequency of what we've just created through voice and sound. And the songs that I wrote about that were in honor of the ancestors, they were so potent. It was palpable. And yes, so that for me,
That's what it's about. The
yes,
palpability. Yeah, it's non-verbal, but I loved that. I loved what you were sharing there, because what you're doing is you're building a bridge. You're building a bridge, and you're bridge building to the ancestral truth that is within you, that then connects to the greater ancestral field. I like to do a story with people around the ancestral field. I don't know if we spoke about it in a previous session, but I'll just say it again, and that is, somebody goes for a walk in the woods, and maybe they take their shoes off, and they kind of let the grass tickle their toes, and they squidge their toes into the ground, and they're like, oh, Mother Earth, so welcoming, so loamy, so nice to walk on, sort of thing. And through my journey of ancestral connection, which has progressed over many years, it came to me very powerfully that is not the earth. Okay, that's not the earth. Every single piece of soil, every single piece of what we call earth, but it's actually soil, mud, that is all something that once lived. All
Oh,
of it
wow.
is something that once lived. It's poo or space dust, and that is it. And if anybody wants a real example of that, go to somewhere like Iceland, where as you walk around, you can see the formative layers of the floral life in these wispy tendrils creeping across the true earth, which is the rock upon which the soil sits. The soil is the embodied ancestral field. It's a phenomenal thing to realize and align with, is that every single grain of soil is something that once lived, or space dust. That's it. It's fundamental. The earth is what that ancestral field sits upon. And if you think about how deep you can dig and still be dealing with mud and what we call earth until we get to the rock, that's deep. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. In fact, we get all our food from that. We grow our food in it. We all live on it. Everything grows out of the ancestral field. And what we're talking about here is tapping that in a different way. And, you look at that comfort you feel like hopefully everybody has walked barefoot on rock at some point in their life. And hopefully everybody there has walked barefoot on grass and soft soil at some point in their life. There's a big difference, isn't there? It's like it's much easier and more comfortable to walk across nice soft soil and grass than it is to walk across sharp rock. In a way, this is what the ancestors have given us. The soil is the embodied form of it, but really the rest of their gifts are to do with making it easier for us to be in the world. So most people watching this don't have to worry about keeping the rain off their head. They don't have to worry about walking to get water. They don't have to worry about these very primal survival aspects, shelter, food, all the rest of it. It's taken care of by the ancestral gift of method, structure, things like that. And in a way, in the same way as the soil, the embodied ancestral remnant, the soil softens the earth for us to find it easier to be on, so does their methods and innovations of structures and water and all the rest of it. So then the question is left, where do I fit in that? What's my place in that? Because you've done all this. The shelter's taken care of. The water's taken care of. The ability to bring food to everybody's door is taken care of. So what's left for me? And what you were speaking of before in terms of what you felt like you had to heal, in terms of where you'd abandoned the feminine or where you'd abandoned yourself perhaps in life. What I've
Absolutely.
discovered in years of doing this is that's what is being asked of us, because in a way the ancestors were so caught up. I've lived off grid. I've lived in chopwood carry water world for a while, living in a yurt with my kids, and it's hard work. um you know People switch on their heating or light a fire without thinking about it until you have processed a tree by hand. The amount of work required just to keep you warm by fire is absolutely monumental. Just a few days worth of fire or just a few days worth of water to be readily available using just your hands. Wow. And even then I have to use an axe or a saw, which is an ancestral gift in itself, an ancestral tool, because I can't mine. I don't know how to make a saw. It's a gift. It's a treasure to make my life easier. These are ancestral gifts. So then they took care of that for us in a way. They took care of it for themselves at the time. But then it was a gift to pass on. The gift of, my child, I don't want you to be covered in the rain. My child, I don't want you to have to suffer as I did. I don't want your saw to be rusty and crap like mine was. I want yours to cut well. How can I improve this for you? And they took care of all of this, but then they didn't have the luxury of the time that we've all got to look at our relationships, to look at our feeling, to look at our alignment and things like that. They were so caught up in existentialism. Anyone in the farming or subsistence lifestyle these days can attest to how time consuming it is. So, and here is where the lens in me started to see the human story across time, where it's like, They took care of all the survival stuff, but I'm willing to bet there are countless ancestors who were like, I've managed to provide all these things, but why do I still not like myself? Or why are my relationships a car crash? Or why am I hurting the ones I love? I don't know. And in a way, we now have the sensitivity and the awareness and the time to look at that unresolved stuff. And this is why I think that is what is coming up for all of us now when we talk about the trauma work, the work of human relations, why relationships between men and women are struggling so much and are such hard work these days, is because actually this is our load to bear. They took care of shelter and providence and all the rest of it. Our place is to sort out our ability to relate with each other and ourselves and spirit in new ways. And I know a lot of people out there might be struggling with the load of trauma, struggling with the sense of powerlessness in the face of what is going on in the world and all the rest of it. And in a way, we're not being picked on. This is to evoke exactly what it's evoking in us, which is we've got to look at this. This is what's staring us in the face, because this is what needs to be resolved for all of us to move on to this next level where we have the shelter, we have the providence, we have the care, but we have the ability to relate. We have the maturity and the sensitivity and the compassion to make room for each other's imperfections and the difficulty of being a skillful human, all the rest of it. But until we can't get there until we deal with this thing that we call multi-generational trauma. And that's what's staring us in the face. And doing this ancestral work and doing the work of this journey that we're doing is to help us feel less alone in that, to help us find our place in that scheme so we can feel supported. Because anybody I know who's tapped that true living ancestral connection, they can feel the goodwill, the living goodwill of the ancestors, both in the living soil that just keeps putting out carrots and potatoes for you to eat and keep going, right to that sense within them of them rooting for our victory, rooting for us to feel joy and love and connection and success. Because I've never encountered anybody who's tapped that ancestral field and not had that experience where all of a sudden it's inspirational to feel less alone. It's inspirational to feel held in a field that feels at home, that knows the earth, that knows this place. Even if the little you in the middle of it doesn't, this does. And all of a sudden to feel held in that everywhere you go is such a gift. It's such and it's our birthright. We were born with the ability to do it. We just lost it because it's not in Western culture.
And that's the work, isn't it? And just I'm thinking, as you're speaking about the soil being the ancestors, what they're discovering now is that we need the soil for a healthy gut biome.
And that is our foundation. And in fact, that foundation is recognized in certain theologies. The kind of the Jewish tradition is aware of it, and so does science, actually. So the Jews have the notion of the golem, which was the rock being animated to life by fire and life by the Lord, and even in the Bible, you have the notion of I will build you as living stone. And then we have the two French scientists. So most people are aware of Darwin and the theory of evolution, but even Darwin acknowledged that it wasn't a theory of the origin of life. It was only of adaptation. It was local adaptation. It wasn't the origin of life. That was still a mystery. And two French scientists are hailed as having really the only existent theory of how did life emerge from these distinct elements of water, earth, rock and air. And this was early 18th or 19th century, I think. And it's still the only established theory of the origin of life, really. And it's called the feet of clay theory, which ties in with the golem story. But really what they were looking for, they were like, right, okay, the elements are distinct and they don't mix. So if we're looking for where life might have managed to insert itself, then we need to look for where the elements almost mix. And they found that the place where the elements almost mixed the most was in clay, where water and earth almost come together properly. And so they started to study these different clays, and I'm not going to go into the detail of it, but people can look up the feet of clay theory, and they'll see why they managed to conclude that they reckoned that life originated in the clays of the earth. Now, if science came up with that theory, and we've got the language of the living stones, and we've got the language of the golem, it ties into what you're saying, which is the earth is the fundament, it's the foundation. And certainly, this is actually what we're going to be doing at Lud's Church. And again, this is just through my own ancestral journeying. Anywhere that the rocks break through the ancestral layer, through the soil, to reach up and reveal the earth to us, the true earth, those are portal opportunities. That's where the earth has broken through the ancestral field to reveal itself. And each of them create opportunity. And this is why places of great rock formation were sacred in times gone by, because they knew this. You could, and anyone who's awakened ancestrally in this way can feel that. And certainly that's what Lud's Church and why we're going there is. It's an opportunity to create this rock alignment. And what I've discovered in my journey is this notion of living stone is actually true. In a way, we have a mineral core, because minerals are rock, really, rock and metal. And we need them to live. Without minerals, we're dead. But we don't need much of them, a tiny amount of mineral. But in a way, what that does is that nourishes this rock core within us. And then all the rest of it, all the muscle, all the sinew, all the blood, is to lubricate that rock so that it can move. And there we have the living stone. There we have the living golem. And
Yeah.
it's an ancient truth. And certainly that's something we'll be looking to tap, so that can become a living truth for people rather than just some theory or just some idea. It's like, no, it's only an idea for the disembodied. It's only an idea for those that haven't had the experience. For those that have had the
Yeah.
experience, it becomes a pervasive, synesthetic, non-verbal truth.
Yeah. That's amazing. I've never heard that before. It's very interesting.
That's
Just
that's
talk,
it. That's
and
my take. That's why.
I love it. And just talk, like just touching again on the ancestral healing work.
Mm.
Uh, I was taught, a couple of decades ago that the work that we're doing is, we're working 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. And I know from my own experiences of healing very tumultuous relationships within my family, that when I cleared what I was holding on to, my judgment around things, the whole energy shifted, and my mother started behaving differently towards me. And because
Yes,
everything is always about the self, right? But we project it onto
absolutely.
something. And I was always projecting. I mean, it's all part of how we learn and grow. So there's no right or wrong in any of this. And I think when you can get to that, which I was so blessed to have such a wise teacher, that you can step out of victim consciousness, because you start to realize, oh,
Absolutely.
we all go through this. We all experience this. We're all everything. God knows what I've done in my past lives. But where I am now, I'm so grateful because I am joyful from within. And I think I'm now at that time in my life where I'm strong enough within myself to go and do a trip like this, to stand in the energy of that, and for it to
Mm.
really mean something. Because even just since meeting you and Stevie and talking about what happened in my ancestral lineage, that was fascinating. Because when Stevie was sharing information with me about what happened with the feud within the clans, I
Yes.
remember feeling like, oh, hang on, I used to think that way when I was a little kid. Where did those thoughts come from? Hello. So again, we've
Yes.
all got this ancestral memory within ourselves because it's in our DNA. Where else are we going in Scotland? I mean, I'm just so
Oh,
excited to be
the
talking over all.
Blackwood, the
Yeah, the black.
Blackwood of Rannoch in Scotland, one of my favourite spots. One of the largest sections, the second largest area of ancient Caledonian woodland that still remains. It's almost like Scotland's rainforest, Scotland's primordial rainforest in a way, and it is special for exactly, based on, what we've been speaking about. It's one of the places where some of that ancient patterning is still there. It's not been as influenced by
Yeah.
overlay and overlay and overlay of human construct and all the rest of it that might dilute or distort the ancient patterning that is still there. So that's a very big one. In contrast to, say, Stanton Drew and Avebury and, say, even St. Bees Priory, each of these sites has been selected, not just because they're amazing and special and powerful, but because they offer us a contrast of experience of places where, say St. Bees Priory is an enclosed church. That's a human structure over a natural energy. Or the stone circles are part human structure, part natural energy. But then when we get to Scotland and we're going to the Black Wood and then to Fingal's Cave, that's
Yeah.
us. There's no human structure there. We're there just in the natural structure to then have the exposure to that patterning and to the opportunity for what that might trigger within us in the field of opportunity of ancient ancestral connection and alignment, not just to the human ancestor, but to the mammal ancestor as well. To the fact that we're animals as well as humans
Saw the
sharing
whales when you
space.
said that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so Fingal's Cave, that's the largest natural cathedral, is it?
No, it's not that. It's just that it is. I consider it to be, and I've been to temples and structures all over the world, and in terms of a natural cathedral, I've never seen anything like Fingal's. It's not just the interior. So people look up Fingal's Cave online, and you see the interior of these incredible basalt columns that are perfect geometry, which in itself is stunning and amazing. But the exterior of it is where, to me, the sense of cathedral comes in, because within Fingal's you only see the vertical column, but on the outside, approaching it, you've got these hexagons and pentagons that are beautifully laid out so you can walk on them to get round to the cave. But the edge of the cave, the rock comes up vertically, but then it curves beautifully. And you've got this beautiful curvature that gives a sense of the kind of structures that we make. We build, you look at so many churches, you have a vertical wall that then arcs over to meet the other side on the roof. So many churches and sacred sites, all sacred structures, all have this line that then arcs and curves. And here is a place where that has been made by nature. And the thing that really gets me, as I've been doing work at the ancestral level for many years now, and it's progressive. It's like you can't really connect with the elemental ancestor, the animal ancestor, the rock ancestor until you've done the human ancestor. It's like a chain, a thread that will lead you to the next. And
Mm.
what really struck me about Fingal's isn't just, I mean, the acoustics are phenomenal in there. It's like a cathedral that the earth has made for the ocean. It's like it was made for the Atlantic Ocean. And when what's special about it is we normally, you go for a walk and you find a rock and it's just a lump. There's no real order or visible structure there. You break it and it might crumble, and it's just a rock. Unless you see a crystal. Now, a crystal has order, it has structure, it has organized form. But what we experience at somewhere like Fingal's is it's not crystal. This is normal rock, but in perfect geometry. And what's stunning is that a normal hillside is above it. And what we get a chance to glimpse is the order beneath the rock, the order beneath the earth, the
Oh, wow.
coherent structure beneath everything. And the opportunity for those who approach in such reverence and such appeal is just phenomenal. It's such a gift in terms of where that taps in the psyche. Is that you go for a walk, you just see the mud and you see the rocks, and people think of the earth and they think of just like maybe a ball of fire at the heart of this molten magma or whatever, and they don't realize that there is order right the way to the bottom of it all. And as soon as that moves and forms, there is order and structure and coherence. And yeah, our experience walking along a hillside, we might not see that, we might not get a sense of that, but places like Fingals are an opportunity to see the order beneath the rock, the order within the earth, the coherence, the structure. Oh, it taps so deep. But again, you kind of need to um, tap some of those layers above that before you can really get the fruits of what an opportunity like that can yield to you. And in a way, one thing I discovered when I was going there initially was, so in the past in the men's work, it was a lot of warrior work at the edge and going beyond the edge and all this sort of stuff. And all of a sudden, you hear stories in say America, or there might be the same in Australia, where there are places that the indigenous people don't really go, or they're like, whoa, that we don't go there. That's too powerful or too sacred in a way, or that's only for the elders. That's only for the shamans, sort of thing. That's the sense I got of Fingal. It's like that's not for the warrior. That's for the elder. That's for the mystic. That's for the one seeking integration, and the one who's already done a bit of work. And sure, you can turn up and get a snapshot of a cave with great geometry, but if you want to get the opportunity afforded by a stupendous natural cathedral that has emerged out of the sea that you can only access by crossing the sea, that's how safe the earth wanted to keep it. It's like, no, you can't just walk to this place. You're going to have to cross the sea to access this cathedral and this opportunity where, before I spoke about when the rock emerges from the land, that's a gift, that's an opportunity. This is where it's emerged from the water. It's bubbling up from the water and it's revealing this perfect order, this structure that has coherence and it's so coherent and it's so reliable. You can stick a mountain on top of it and it won't fall down.
This thought just dropped in around, well, there's beings that live down there. So of course there's
Exactly.
order.
Exactly.
The earth is conscious. There's so much happening, like water is conscious. The invisible air around us is not just empty. There's so much
Absolutely.
that we're all waking up to and activating in our own awareness. So we can live with more presence and more reverence, even with just going down the beach. Most mornings I go to the beach, so grateful. I put my feet on the earth, I say hello to the water, and I'm like, I have conversations with it. I have conversations with the sun and with the sky, and then I sing to it. Today I was trying to sing in the dolphins because it's my relationship with my reality. And when I go down there, I'm by myself. I don't take my
That's it.
phone. I just go there and I connect because life is busy, and that's my mental health. That keeps me joyful, happy, connected. And I can always tell when I start getting off kilter because it's like, oh, I've got to get down the beach again, or got to get into nature again, because there's harmony there in the structure. And that's what I feel like going to these sacred sites, why it's so powerful, because there's these ley lines, and standing in those. I've done work with Maggie Lamb and learning how to feel like water under the earth can feel depressing when there's too much fire in the earth, when it hasn't had enough water and it's dry. If you live on that can actually cause eruptions within us. We get argumentative, and so all these ley lines and just the way the earth is. For me, I'll just have to look, where do I want to sit? If it looks beautiful, if it looks nice, that's a positive ley line. You can see it. I
Yeah.
remember we did a reading on this block that I bought, and Maggie Lamb, and she remote views, and she's been my teacher for 25 years. She remote viewed and she drew the map out, sends it to me, where she said there was a negative ley line. there was literally this line across the lawn where there was lawn grub, and it didn't look nice. Whereas where there were positive ley lines running through, everything was thriving. Where there was negative ley lines, the trees were a bit stumped. I can see that when we're visiting these sites, just to stand in
Yeah.
present is going to be a real gift. And I feel
This
just
is
so blessed that you're guiding us and that you've been there and done it before, and we're all in good hands. So there's still 3 places left, by the way. So we've got 3 spots left for
yeah.
this
Come along.
Sacred Sounds,
Mm.
starting the 3rd of September 2025. So we're moving through Avebury and then the Springs. We're going to the tour, Glastonbury tour, and lots of other beautiful places.
Yeah, we're
Cumbria.
going to the 3 biggest stone circles in the UK. We'll be visiting. So there's Avebury, Stanton Drew, and then Longmeg, and then we move into the natural structures. But just to pick up on what you were speaking about earlier, what you're describing is geomancy. Geomancy, which is
Oh,
the
okay, yeah.
awareness of the earth energy and all, and what it is. And I wanted to draw a correlation for people, just to add to what you were saying, and for people where that might sound a bit mystical or a bit inaccessible to them. And I like to draw these correlations in the body, because we've all got a body, so we can all
Mm.
relate. And I use a story to help people understand the chakras who aren't in energy work. If I'm having a talk with everyday people who are a bit like, what do you mean chakras? What do you mean energy centers? What do you mean this? Balls of light, whatever. And I'd be like, well, okay, let's look at the body. And it's like, okay, so we know where the rough locations of the chakras in the body are, coccyx, the sacrum, diaphragm, heart, all the rest of it. So what I'll say to people is, okay, if I hit myself in the arm, or I hit myself in the leg, or I injure myself there, where do I feel it? Well, I feel it in the site that it happened. I feel I feel it where I hit my arm. But if I fall and hit my coccyx, or somebody hits me in the diaphragm or the genitals, you don't just feel it in the area that you were struck. It has a pervasive effect. I mean, how many of us have fallen on our coccyx and just been like, "Arr," as it pervades the whole of the lower back, down into the thighs, up into the back, you can't move the legs, sort of thing. You have this pervasive effect and this pervasive, almost emanation of influence and effect of these node points, which is really what the chakras are. They're node points. And in a way, these sites are like that. They're
Yes.
node points. And it's like, yes, we can go and gather on a field somewhere, and yes, we can have an experience and share sound and stuff, but that's a bit like this. It's like, yeah, we'll feel it, but it'll be there. But going to these sites and going to these places is like, and the ley line work is like heading to a chakra spot, heading to a spot where not only does our offering and our service and our activity have a pervasive and radiant effect, just like the radiant effect of hitting your coccyx, but it's also about the effect it can have on our field, because we're exposing ourselves to that level of natural radiant energy. And again, it's about an opportunity to experience that for those who have never experienced it, because until you've experienced it, you just don't know. It's just a theory or an idea. One field looks the same as the next.
Exactly. And I think the beautiful thing about what we've created is that we've all done a lot of work in ourselves, and we're in this for heart reasons. You don't have to be a perfect singer. It's not about that. It's about allowing yourself to express whatever comes through in the moment, and doing it with people where there's
Yeah.
no judgment and where we can be really held. And I feel that's where the gift is with what we're offering, because I know I can hold space. I've been doing it a long time now. I know my daughter's very good at it, and I know you're amazing at it. And that's the value.
Mm,
Taking people in, leading them with conscious intention and holding space and knowing how to do that. There's so much
mm.
value in that. This is
Anyone out there who might be doubting coming along because they maybe feel like they can't sing or something like that, it's like, forget that idea. We're all still beginners in a way, in terms of achieving our potential as humans, as fully integrated beings. And until we can hold a compassionate and welcoming beginner space for ourselves and each other, we're screwed as a species. So certainly anyone out there is like, no, this is about coming along and exposing yourself to something new, and nobody's expecting it to be perfect. Nobody's expecting it to you to come along with a prior level of competence. That's not the point. The point is to come along and be exposed. And none of us were able to walk without falling over 100 times, and we still 1,000 times even, and most of us had somebody holding our hand to help us stand and take those first few steps. Every single stage of the journey of being a human being, it maps the chart of becoming skillful in the body, which is, as babies, we were all flapping around at first and knocking over cups and we wanted to pick them up. And it took us like 10 years to get any good at that. And then the emotions come out, and in a way, the emotions that birth forth at puberty is no different to the physical body when we first got it. And it is, they flap about and they hit us and they hit other people until we begin them under our control. And the same happens to the mind, and the same happens to all of the aspects of being a human. And that is, we're going to fumble, we're going to trip, we're going to stumble until we get good. That is the rule of competency. It's the rule of mastery. And in this perfectionist world, when we're exposed to media and the things that take our attention seem to be people with such skill and such precision and such a polished finish, it can make it seem quite intimidating to be in a beginner space. But if that is what's holding anybody back from thinking about coming along to this, please put that notion to rest and realize that we expect stumbling. We welcome it because it's honest. We want the honesty of each of our imperfection. That's the true offering, of self-acceptance of there's the idea I would like to have about myself. Here's where I would like to be, but here's the truth of where I am. And I can't get to where I want to be or where I believe I can be in my potential. There's nobody can achieve that without accepting the truth of where they are first, because that's the path.
Yeah. It's self-love. It's just self-acceptance. Like every day is different. Like some days, like let's talk about singing. Some days my voice is open and free and I sing really well, and other days dodgy, and it's whether I got enough sleep or whether I haven't been eating as well, or if I've got something emotional going on. Every day is different. And so it's about just accepting where it's at. But at the end of the day, it's always bringing it back to the heart and singing from there. And there is never any judgment. You do not have to be a perfect singer at all. Even if you don't even feel like you know how to sing, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
because I'm looking forward to because we just did a fantastic interview with Jonathan and Andy Goldman about humming, and I know you've done a lot of work around vocal toning and humming, and it's just so powerful. The benefits are incredible. We better wrap it up pretty soon.
We should, yes. Well, I just want to add one more comment before we wrap up, and that is again on the singing thing, because I'll be leading some sounding stuff on this event as well. And certainly it's about learning that we have, like some people call it humming or toning or whatever, but actually I teach it as vertical sounding, as something that is distinct from singing and distinct from speech, but is as powerful as singing and as powerful as speech for changing our state, for opening up new pathways and opportunities of alignment. And it's got nothing to do with your singing ability, but it will improve your singing. And so we're going to have the complementariness on this event of singing, vertical sound, singing, and as we oscillate, they'll mutually improve each other. So there's a real opportunity to just bathe in sounds of each other and ourselves as we, it's not just the land exposure, it's what's going to be coming out of us as we go and improve in our sounding as we go. So the only condition of coming is you must be willing to make sound. It doesn't matter how it comes out, but you've got to be willing to make some noise.
Yep. As I say, bring your sense of adventure, and that's all you need. And that
Absolutely.
willingness to participate, because I actually don't let anyone sit in the room that are not singing with us. It's like I don't allow
I
people in
like
the
it.
room that are just sitting there watching, because it's a natural human condition. They'll judge, and
Mm.
so it just doesn't happen. So it'll be the same on this trip. So everyone's required to participate. No one has to be perfect. So thank you, Mr. Darren Deojee. That was fantastic. And if anyone's got any questions, please reach out to myself or Darren. I will leave the website details below. I'll chat to you again very soon, Darren, where we do another beautiful talk around the power of words and how to create spells with our words, because I've had a lot of people wanting the next episode from the last one that we did.
Great. Oh, there's more. We can go deeper. Yes, look
Yeah,
forward to that. Very much so.
love it.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a real
Thanks,
pleasure
Darren.
to have this
So much
conversation.
love. Thank you, and we're
Yes.
so looking forward to being over there. All right, thanks everyone for being here.